Everyone's talking about Zohran Mandami ever since he won the primary in the New York City mayor race. And now it is moving forward to November, where Andrew Cuomo has decided to run yet again, but this time as an independent, and Eric Adams also as an independent. Right now, the numbers show that Zohran Mandami is leading this race. And if these numbers hold, he will win in November. But something else is happening here. Now, Bernie Sanders apparently is asking Zohran Mandami to tone down his rhetoric, in particular about Israel. And this is where myself and some alike had concerns, where this idea of democratic socialism through the Democratic Party basically ends up failing unless that person decides to concede or to move towards the Democrat establishment position on particular issues. One in particular is Israel. So, what is this really all about? What is happening here? Why is Bernie Sanders trying to get Zohran Mandami to tone down his message? Now, of course, we would expect this from someone like Hakeem Jeffries, someone who's corporate, someone who takes money from AIPAC. But this is what I had warned people before about Bernie Sanders. Even when it comes to Israel and Gaza, Bernie Sanders is only willing to go but so far. He is great at criticizing the Israeli government, but when it comes to the creation, the existence of Israel, and the racism and extremism that resides in Israel, aside from the government itself, that is where Bernie Sanders is more willing to draw the line. And this is what I've been trying to warn people about. So he's trying to get Zohran Mandami to tone down his rhetoric on Israel. In other words, he's trying to get Zohran Mandami to become more moderate. So let's take a look at this. This was announced by CNN here. Take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. What Bernie Sanders told Zohran Mandami about anti Semitism and pushing back on Democratic leaders. So here we go again, right? Everything has to be toned down. So apparently, there was a meeting that happened here. Let's go ahead and get into this. The 33-year-old assemblyman and Democratic Socialist had breakfast Wednesday with Democratic members of Congress before a private strategy session with Bernie Sanders, a key endorser before his stunning primary victory. But party leaders and many swing district lawmakers kept their distance from him, worried about his policy ideas and Republican plans to make him a national foil. So again, so much for vote blue no matter who, right? Sanders urged his now protege to be firm in calling for Democratic leaders to rally behind him, but also to be more careful addressing what he says about Israel. See, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. First was a breakfast meeting with AOC, who had also endorsed him before the primary. The conversation around the platters, according to multiple people in the room, involved roughly 40 House Democrats asking and taking notes about Mandami's message and affordability. Mandami joked at one point that in terms of getting support, he's gone from being the hunter to the hunted, right? So let's go on a little bit further here where it gets into the part about what Bernie Sanders told Zohran. What Sanders told Mandami. Perhaps Mandami's biggest meeting of the day was with Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, and the senior senator from Brooklyn, or with Kirsten Gillibrand, the chair of Senate Democrats campaign arm, and the state's junior senator. We don't forget what Kirsten Gillibrand said with her racist remarks. Neither has met with him. Both have pushed off talk about endorsing him. Sanders, a Brooklyn native, was eager to welcome Mandami for the first meeting after several calls, including a congratulatory one after his primary win. The closest that they've come in person before was at Sanders' October 2019 rally in Queens. It goes on to say a person who was familiar with their conversation disclosed the advice that Sanders gave to Mandami, the eagerness of some wealthy opponents to his candidacy to attack his campaign via super PACs and independent expenditures. Sanders told him was a topic worth keeping attention to. Call out the oligarchs, the senator said, but also be prepared not to unilaterally disarm via his own pack. What I find outrageous, to tell you the truth, is that you have billionaires openly saying, well, yes, Mondami won the primary, but we're going to spend as much money as it takes to defeat him. Sanders told Anderson Cooper. As for the Democrats who have been holding out, Sanders said in a private meeting there should be no supplication, even Jeffries and Schumer. They should be supporting him since he's a Democratic nominee. According to the person familiar with his comments, Sanders noted he did the same when he lost the Democratic presidential primaries to Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. So let me pause here for a second. Yeah, I think Bernie's being a little too kind. It's not just Democrats, or excuse me, billionaires that are, trying to find a way to get Zohran to lose. There's also members of his own party that want Zohran to lose, and they've gone on record publicly to say so. So it's not just the billionaires in this particular case. Let's continue on here. Sanders, who is Jewish, urged Mondami to be cautious about how he approaches talking about Israel. Both are critics of Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's handling of the war in Gaza. Ahead of the trip, Mondami told business leaders in New York that he would discourage the use of the phrase globalize the intifada. Mondami, who has not used the phrase himself, has said he believes the phrase to be a rallying cry for Palestinian human rights and refused to condemn its use when asked during his primary. Goes on to say here, according to the person familiar with the conversation, Sanders told Mondami he had to do a better job explaining that his criticism is not anti-Semitic and to not let himself seem like he's minimizing the fears of Jews in New York and elsewhere feel from the threat of hate against them. So let me come out here for a second. Let's talk about this. So here's the problem, folks. The problem that you run into with these political parties is that oftentimes there may be people a part of the party that don't necessarily agree with the party politics, the partisan games. So it's like they have their own vision, they have their own ideas, but it's not about what's best for them or their campaign. It's about what's best for the party. That happens on both sides, Democratic Party, the Republican Party, etc. This is the problem with political parties. This is why Bernie Sanders, after they took states from him in 2016 and gave them to Hillary Clinton at that DNC convention there, this is why he still went along to endorse Hillary Clinton, because the party decided this is what is best for the party. But that wasn't necessarily what was best for the American people. What would have been better for the American people is to have those policies that Bernie Sanders was running on. So Bernie is now telling him to tone it down a little too much. You don't want to offend, some of those constituents and da da da. So here's the thing, folks. The problem that I have with Bernie Sanders, with this in particular, is that Bernie wants to blame Netanyahu and Israel's government, but he doesn't want to hold criticism towards Israel as a whole. There's a reason for that. Number one, don't forget that Bernie also at one point lived in a kibbutz. A lot of people don't know about this, but Bernie at one point lived in a kibbutz. Two, don't forget when Bernie was questioned about this in 2015, which I didn't see this video till like 2 years ago. When Bernie was questioned about what was happening to the Palestinian people in 2015 at his own town hall by one of his constituents, he told them to shut up and sit down. The point that I'm trying to make is this. Bernie Sanders has a problem with Netanyahu and the Likud party, but Bernie Sanders is not against Israel having a right to exist, even though they stole the land. He is not against Israel being where they are. He is not against that. And the problem with this message in particular is that when you give people the impression that it's just the government, it makes people believe that if the government were replaced by elections or via regime change, that the things would drastically improve for people in that area. And that's not necessarily the case. The most recent poll shows that the majority of Israelis agree with what is happening to the Palestinian people and they want them all gone. Is that the government? No, that's the people. So the racism and the supremacy, it is ingrained in the people. So you can replace Benjamin Netanyahu with another puppet, but the ideology still remains. What Bernie Sanders will not say is that Israel is a racist, supremacist state. He'll tell you that Netanyahu is racist and supremacist. He'll tell you the Likud party is racist and supremacist, but he won't go as far to tell you that Israel and the ideology behind Zionism is racist and supremacist. So removing Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't take away that ideology. That's the part that Bernie Sanders will not get into. You can see it right here with this more recent video here. He published this July 7th, I believe. Listen to this.
As President Trump and members of Congress roll out the red carpet for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, let us remember that Netanyahu has been indicted as a war criminal by the International Criminal Court for overseeing the systematic killing and starvation of civilians in Gaza. These war crimes continue to this day. Netanyahu's extremist government has killed more than 57,000 Palestinians and wounded almost 135,000, 60% of whom are women, children, or elderly people. Hundreds of thousands of people are starving after Israel prevented any aid from entering Gaza for nearly 3 months. In the last 6 weeks, Israel has allowed a trickle of aid to get in through a private foundation backed by security contractors.
Pause right here. Okay. All of this is true. But the problem that you run into with this is that, first of all, the whole idea of Israel allowing aid to get in, that points to the occupation. And this is the part that I really need people to zone in on. Prior to October 7th, the Palestinian people were still occupied and oppressed. When that constituent of Bernie Sanders approached him in 2015 and asked him about what was happening to the Palestinian people, and he told them to shut up and sit down, because he didn't want them to criticize Israel. These people have been fenced in like they're cattle. That is that just because of the Likud party? No. He's talking about the trickling in of aid. What about the caloric diet? How Israel put them on a caloric diet long before October 7th. Only certain foods can come in. The occupation itself is racist and supremacist. And yes, it is oppression. What about the settlers who are stealing the homes in the West Bank? It's racist and supremacist. It's not just Netanyahu. It's not just the Likud party. And this is the problem with Bernie Sanders, even with his critique of what is happening in Gaza, what's happening to the Palestinian people. He's still timid with it. He's not willing to call out Israel for being a racist, supremacist state that the majority of Israelis, especially according to that poll, agree with. Ta-Nehisi Coates went there. He saw the apartheid. He saw the racism. Why won't Bernie Sanders say that Israel is a apartheid state? You see, this is why I say, for those who are excited about Zohran Mandami, don't be surprised if Zohran ends up governing a lot more moderately than he would like to. He's already getting told what to do when he hasn't even won the general election. They're already telling him. I saw the picture with him and Richie Torres. Zohran told you he was going to try to court some of the moderates, right? He's trying to get some of their support. So he's going into spaces he's showing you right now. He hired Obama's former advisor to work along with him. And also, this guy also worked with Andrew Cuomo. So he's bringing in trying to get in some of the moderates, which means also at the end of the day, he's going to end up changing Some of these, I don't think he's going to be able to do all of these things because they're already telling him what to do. And then we'll get into the fact about Governor Hochul as well, because she's not going to allow some of these things to happen. So Bernie, we appreciate you criticizing Netanyahu and the IDF and what they're doing, what is happening to Palestinian people. But until you get to the point where you can acknowledge that Israel itself is an apartheid state, that it's a racist, supremacist state, you're not really trying to call for change of the system. You want the starvation to stop. You want the bombs to stop. He still says Israel has a right to defend itself, by the way. You want the killing of the civilians to stop, which I think we all agree on. But at the end of the day, you still okay with the apartheid system. You still okay with people having different passports, depending on if they're Palestinian or if they're Jewish or not. Like this is ridiculous. You're still okay with the system that is in place in Israel. And now he's telling Zohran to tone down his message. Be careful. You may have offended some folks. Unbelievable.
This has been a catastrophe, with near daily massacres at the new aid distribution sites. In its first 5 weeks of operation, 640 people have been killed and almost 5,000 injured while trying to access food through this mechanism. A coalition of more than 200 NGOs said last week that, quote, Palestinians in Gaza face an impossible choice: starve or risk being shot while trying desperately to reach food to feed their families, end quote. The Red Cross reports that Gaza's hospitals are overwhelmed by a, quote, relentless surge in critical cases, end quote, from these daily massacres, and that medical facilities are running out of body bags. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz interviewed Israeli soldiers posted to these distribution points, who say they are ordered to shoot into crowds of civilians who posed no risk. One soldier said, quote, it's a killing field.
Yeah. I just this is what I said before. It's not just the government. Until you address the ideology, until you address Zionism and what Zionism actually is, then you can miss me with all of this. And you'll see even here, Governor Hochul, she comes in. This is why I'm warning people, preparing people, right? This is not to tell you, obviously, your choices, Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, and Zohran Mandami. So obviously, Zohran Mandami is leading the polls for a reason. But I am preparing you for what is to come. And this is why I believe that a lot of these people that are Democratic Socialists, this should be a separate political party. I really do believe that. So listen to what she says.
Let's talk first about the mayoral race that we've been discussing already this morning. Zohran Mamdani is leading the polls right now, but former Governor Andrew Cuomo says, I'm staying in. You've got the current mayor, Eric Adams, in the race as well. We were talking as you sat down, you said, it is my job to make it work. Whoever the mayor of New York City is, I can work with whoever wins this race.
That is a true statement. I have no choice. And what people fail to realize, what they will next year perhaps, is that the governor has enormous power over all of our cities. And for example, a couple days ago, I had to sign legislation to allow the city of New York to put cameras in speed zones near schools. Now, one would think that's something the local government handles, but the way it's been structured since the 1970s, when a lot of power was given because of the meltdown, the fiscal crisis here, Albany has extraordinary power over the city. I can work with whomever the voters want me to work with.
See, this is what I'm forewarning people about. New York City is a little bit different than some of the other cities where the governor does have more pull. Like, for instance, I'm in Massachusetts and in Boston, it's a little bit different. There are things that the mayor in Boston can do that they don't need the approval of the governor to do. New York City is different. So she's already letting you know that she has more power over New York City, even though she's the governor of the state and not the mayor of New York City. And this is part of the reason why I've said before, I don't think he's going to be able to get some of these things done. We'll let her go on here.
I will never work or harm the city of New York. I won't hold money hostage and make people suffer, as has been practices in the past. But people have to understand that I'm going to make sure that we have a climate where businesses can thrive. They create jobs. They give us the revenues I need to be able to have very generous social safety net programs. So we'll keep it all together. But this is going to be an election for the ages. A little unprecedented to have all the attention in November. It's usually settled in June. So we'll be watching closely.
Mamdani met with a group of business leaders here in New York yesterday, expressed some of their concerns about his policy proposals, that he's a democratic socialist, that he might not have the best interest of New York City's business community in mind. Do you share any of those concerns?
I actually raised many of those concerns with him directly.
See?
I said, you have a lot of healing to do with the Jewish community. Oh. Many of your words have been hurtful and hateful to people in their interpretation of it. So job number one is to straighten that relationship out if you can, and to get them to understand that if you become the mayor, we don't know the outcome, but if you become the mayor, that you'll be a mayor for everyone. And no one should have to worry about being in a city and feeling less safe because of who the mayor is and their religious beliefs. So that was important. I raised.
Pause right here for a second. Do you guys understand what's happening? Notice what she just said. The number one thing for him to do is to make sure that he can has healing with the Jewish community. She said that's the number one thing that he has to do. Everybody paying attention here? Is everybody paying attention? Do you see once again about priorities? She's already telling him what he has to do. So Governor Hochul and Bernie Sanders are on the same page there, on the same page. And this is why I say when people look to politicians as heroes, which I once did too, just don't. You'll be disappointed. They've been known to politicians will let you down. At the end of the day, it's all about what works for Wall Street and the military industrial complex. And I think what you're seeing here, notice how they said, oh, we're worried about the businesses, big business people. They are prioritizing big business over working class people. And Kathy Hochul, along with Bernie Sanders here, is your number one. You need to focus on healing with said community. And I've said this over and over again. When people bring up identity politics, it seems like identity politics is only problematic when you're talking about an identity that people don't want to be a priority. I don't know, guys. Just something to pay close attention to. It looks like they're trying to pull him to be more moderate, which is what I had predicted. So just prepare yourself. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.